It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Well, the Sacramento Kings went 0-2 in the California Classic, blowing fourth quarter leads in both games. So maybe Summer League is more like the regular season for the Kings than we thought. That, of course, is a joke. It doesn't matter if you win or lose in Summer League. It's all about individual performances and seeing which players can actually have a chance to make it in the NBA and which, unfortunately, just are not going to make the cut. More positives from this game 2 of the California Classic. Some negatives, including a rough night for Davion Mitchell, especially on the offensive end. But defensively, I liked some of the things that he was doing, even though it wasn't paying off for him. We will talk about that. And also on today's Locked On Kings podcast, I'm going to be joined by Bobby Gerould, the son of Sacramento Kings radio broadcaster Gary Gerould, who devotes his time to studying draft classes and college players and really loves the Summer League, loves the California Classic because he gets to see these players really come together in person. I guarantee you Bobby Gerould is one of the most knowledgeable people, not just in Sacramento, but on the planet when it comes to these Summer League rosters. He's going to give us more information, his opinions on some of these players on the Kings roster who have chances to actually have an NBA career, who could be on the Kings radar for two-way contracts. It's all on today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of the Sacramento Kings from January all the way through to December, this is the place for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been a Sacramento sports radio host for the last 7 years. This is season number 8 for me, covering the Kings, both as an on-air host and multimedia journalist. And audio listeners, I apologize. This isn't really going to make sense for you, but video listeners, I've heard so many of you asking, what's the deal with that Lakers thing in the background? I'm pointing to it on my screen right now, audio listeners. Everybody thinks it's a Lakers mug. It's on a shelf in the background. And I know when I move my head, that Lakers logo stands out. No, I, of course, am not a hidden Lakers fan, nor is my wife or anything like that. That is actually a roll of toilet paper. Yes, I have a roll of toilet paper. Funny enough, my father-in-law on my wedding day wrote his speech on a roll of toilet paper with the Lakers logo on it. So I absolutely had to keep it. That's why it's there in the background. Of course, I wouldn't own anything Lakers related unless it was funny or demeaning in some way, shape, or form. Come on, guys. You think so little of me. But there, I cleared the air. I don't want to hear any more questions or accusations as to why I have something Lakers in the background. Pay attention to the big Kings flag in my my crown and my foam finger and stuff like that. By the way, that foam finger in the background, I got from a Kings game in like 2004, and I was 10 years old at the time. I also have a cowbell back here that was given to my uncle for being a season ticket member a number of seasons ago. A Sacramento Kings snow globe. Man, I got all this useless Kings junk that I love. I absolutely love, and I know you've got some collections as well. If you do, send me pictures of them at Matt George Radio on Twitter. Email me, mgeorge@saclocalmedia.com. I'd love to see all the obscure Sacramento Kings paraphernalia that you happen to have. And in my closet over here, you can't see it, but I got plenty of Kings jerseys in there, including my Optimism jersey from a couple of seasons ago that I made. I have a Jimmer jersey. I have a DeMarcus Cousins jersey in there. I have a Weber jersey. I have like 4 Mike Bibby jerseys. Bibby was my guy growing up. So I got plenty of that stuff. So show that off to me. I would love to see that. All right, let's get to business now. Let's actually talk about this game 2 of the California Classic, which I was not in attendance for. I watched the game on the broadcast at home. Kyle Draper, Katie Christensen doing a phenomenal job on the broadcast, as they always do. I mean, I know there's a vacancy now in that color commentator spot with Doug Christie leaving television to go be a part of the Kings coaching staff. And all I'm saying is I wouldn't mind Katie Christensen being more of a permanent part of that broadcast team. But I'm not just saying that because she gave us Locked On Kings a shout out during the broadcast. She was talking about my conversation that I had with Bill Peterson, the special assistant coach for Baylor University. If you missed that podcast, it's yesterday's podcast, a long conversation where Bill just talks about Davion Mitchell coming up through Baylor and his journey to the NBA, tells some great stories, gives you a good idea of who Davion Mitchell is, as well as what kind of NBA player he is going to be. So go and check out that interview. But unfortunately for Davion, it wasn't the best of nights tonight for him. After a stellar, I thought, performance in game 1 of the California Classic against the Golden State Warriors, game 2 was more of a humbling experience for the rookie. It's going to be ups and downs throughout your NBA career, of course, especially as a rookie, and he experienced a bit of a down night in this one. Finished with 10 points on 4 of 13 shooting. He was very efficient shooting the basketball and scoring the night before. This game, though, 4 of 13 shooting, 0 of 2 from 3-point range. And probably the most concerning area that I've seen for Davion Mitchell so far in these 2 Summer League games. Again, not trying to overreact to anything because it's just 2 Summer League games. And there's going to be plenty of growth happening for everybody on that Summer League roster, but especially Davion Mitchell. His free throw shooting. Now, he did shoot 2 of 3 in this game. The free throw that he missed, I think he airballed short. But with how aggressive Davion Mitchell plays and with his size, he is going to draw a lot of contact and he is going to get to the free throw line. And you're going to want Davion Mitchell to get his free throw shooting percentage around 75% at the very least. You want that in the 75, 80 percentile range. Now, that's something that De'Aaron Fox struggles with also. But to be an effective point guard, especially an undersized point guard, you have to shoot the 3-pointer and you have to be able to shoot free throws at a good clip in the NBA. So that's going to be something to pay attention to, part of his development throughout his rookie season, maybe the early parts of his career. Defensively, we did see those flashes of what he can do, picking up guys full court, just being that nuisance, not as aggressive defensively. Well, I shouldn't say aggressive because he finished with 7 personal fouls in this game, which, by the way, you can't foul out in Summer League. So I shouldn't say not as aggressive, but not as, I guess, effective with poking the ball away and creating some steals. Now, he did finish with 1 steal in this game. Unfortunately, turned the ball over 4 times and had only 1 assist. So that assist to turnover ratio needs to get better. That was something that he did very well at Baylor over the last couple of seasons. So the assist to turnover ratio needs to get better. That'll also come with time of actually running offensive sets, which this Sacramento Kings Summer League team has a little bit, but in reality, this is a compilation of players that hasn't really played together before on very limited practice time. So it's a lot of ISO ball on offense, and it shows. But the reason why I say Davion Mitchell hasn't really been or was still aggressive defensively in this game is he was looking to draw a lot of charges. And I like that from Davion Mitchell, especially being undersized. The problem is he was just a step late on a lot of these fouls that went against him. But I like that he's trying to draw them. I like that he's putting his body on the line. That is something I expect to get better for him as the Summer League and as the regular season comes along. I will say, though, Jahmi'us Ramsey played his first game for the Sacramento Kings here in Summer League after missing the last game with injury. And he finished with just 2 points on 1 of 5 shooting, including 0 of 3 from 3-point range. Jahmi'us Ramsey was drafted in the NBA, known for his ability to space the floor and his ability to shoot. And we really haven't seen that too much. He did have some moments, some bright moments when playing for the Clippers G League team in the G League bubble last season. But still, the shooting has not been where you want it to be so far for even a second-round pick who is known for shooting in college. So in all, the 2 second-round picks from last season so far in Summer League have been disappointing. Now, we have had more of a sample size from Robert Woodard than we had from Jahmi'us Ramsey, but Robert Woodard in these 2 games really has not looked great, especially considering how good he looked in the G League bubble. And I would argue that the G League bubble competition is equal, if not better, than some of the competition that he is facing currently in Summer League. And we haven't seen that same confident, aggressive, attacking Robert Woodard that we saw for the Spurs G League team a number of months ago. So I expect that to continue to improve, or it really honestly needs to improve, because so far, both of those guys, looking at them, I don't see guys that belong on the main roster. I don't see guys that have any shot of cracking the Kings rotation, which is disappointing, especially for Robert Woodard, when physically and defensively with his size, he has the intangibles to be a solid defender and a solid wing presence that this Kings team needs. So I hope Robert Woodard can get better. We did get to see Neemias Queta for I keep saying Queta, it's Queta, Neemias Queta for the first time in this game. And the first thing I noticed when he stepped on the floor, the dude is long, a natural 7-footer, but a big wingspan, just covers a lot of ground, blocked a shot immediately coming into the game, or maybe just tipped it. I don't know if they gave him a block. No, they didn't. So they didn't give him the block for it. I thought it was a block. It looked like a block on television. But regardless, you could see the size that Neemias provides for the Sacramento Kings. Only played 11.5 minutes, but did finish with 6 points, an efficient 3 of 5 shooting. Only 4 rebounds. So that's a number you'd like to see go up, especially for being a natural 7-footer. So not going to overreact to anything really from him. It was just good to see him play. And I'm excited to see him continue to develop here with Sacramento. I think he has a very good chance of getting a 2-way contract. I also think he has a good chance of actually finding his way into the Kings rotation eventually. So it was good to see Neemias Queta suit up and get the chance to play. We also did get to see Alex Antetokounmpo for the first time, the younger brother of Giannis Antetokounmpo, played 7.5 minutes, finished with 2 points, 1 of 2 shooting. I don't know if I could tell you really anything other than he played, because nothing really stood out, which honestly is expected in these summer league games. So the Kings unfortunately fall 84-74, 0-2 so far in summer league. Now they will head to Las Vegas after a little more practice time for actual summer league play, and we'll hopefully see improvement from a lot of guys when they are playing in Vegas. But now let's learn a little bit about these guys. And to help us learn more about them is Bobby Gerould, the son of Gary Gerould. And like I said in the intro, Bobby is just so well plugged in to summer league rosters and to college prospects and NBA hopefuls that he really understands these guys and has a good feel of who can actually have a successful NBA career and who is just kind of a pretender, honestly, for lack of a better word. So we will hear from Bobby in just a second. Before that, though, want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or intimidating questioning from the counterman only for him to order the only parts that his warehouse happens to carry, regardless of price? You have internet, you have a computer, you have a phone, go to rockauto.com. It's the Amazon, really, of auto parts. You can look at all different options, different makes, different models, different brands of the parts that you need with, of course, different price points. Pick and choose the ones that you prefer. It can save you a ton of money. Trust me, it did for me when I needed some new parts with my car, honestly, currently still in the shop. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Be sure to write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box so they know that we sent you? Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Anytime I get the opportunity to speak to a member of the Gerould family here in Sacramento, I can expect someone with a high basketball knowledge. But Bobby Gerould, the son of Sacramento Kings radio broadcaster Gary Gerould, is not just a basketball whiz. He is also someone that devotes his time every single year to studying college basketball, studying NBA draft prospects. And in terms of knowledge of these Summer League rosters and who's competing in the California Classic and Summer League for the Sacramento Kings, other than front office members, there's probably not a person inside the Golden One Center who knows more about these guys. So I'm very excited to have Bobby Gerould back here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Bobby, I'm so glad that I got to see you at the Golden One Center the other night. So glad that you're on the broadcast with Jason Ross and your dad. It's a pleasure to have you on Locked On Kings, sir.
Thank you very much, Matt. It's great to be with you. Always look forward to talking basketball.
So before we jump into kind of some of the obscure names or names that we don't know too much about, I did want to ask you for your opinion on the Kings selection of Davion Mitchell at 9. Now, I heard you speaking with Jason Ross on the radio the other day, and you were sharing how you were a big fan of Jalen Johnson in this draft for the Sacramento Kings. Of course, they didn't end up going in that direction. They ended up with Davion Mitchell, and you said you were surprised, like many of us, about that pick, but you weren't bothered by it, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I wanted Jalen Johnson, but that's neither here nor there because the pick has happened. It's Davion Mitchell, and like I told Jason, there were a couple of guys left on the board there that I without mentioning their names, I really didn't want on the Kings, and so I was ready to cringe. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't think it's going to be Jalen, but I hope it's not these guys, and I'm ready to cringe. And then the name came up, Davion Mitchell, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can get down with that because, if you watched a lot of college basketball, and I'm sure even the casual fan probably saw a few of the Baylor games because they went on to the championship in the NCAA. He was unquestionably, along with Jared Butler, the leader of Baylor and the most outstanding player in the tournament. The defensive player of the year named by the National Association of Basketball Coaches, which carries to me a lot more weight than say the AP or a Big 12 conference thing voted on by the media. So Davion Mitchell is a guy that's going to bring it every night. And, something else that I've always talked about is it's one thing to look at a spreadsheet and to think about how this player might stack up, but you have to always remember that you really are drafting a human being, and he has to get along with the coaches. He has to earn the respect of his teammates. He has to be a competitor, someone who's going to answer the bell. And I think Davion checks all those boxes and then some, as far as being a guy you can count on. So I think that's good. He has a really low center of gravity offensively, and he's able to get to the spots that he wants to get to. Not a huge scorer, averaged 14 points and 5.5 assists for the national champions. Shot 44% from three-point range. Struggled a little bit from the free throw line, which is kind of curious for someone who shoots such a high rate from beyond the arc. I think matter of fact, I know he made just 64% of his free throws last year. 2.26 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. That's very good, especially given how often he handled the ball. So I think he's a good pick, and hopefully going forward, you've got a guy that's going to fit into the culture seamlessly and just be a low maintenance guy that's going to work hard and improve.
It seems like in the modern NBA, you just can't have enough primary ball handlers, as we saw with the addition of Tyrese Halliburton and now the addition of Davion Mitchell. But you talked about how with Baylor, his primary role was with the ball in his hands versus playing off the ball. Now, I know at Baylor, they also played with small lineups and oftentimes did run 3-guard sets, so it's not something that is completely new to him. But how do you feel about Davion Mitchell's ability to play off the ball in lineups featuring De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton at the NBA level?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a little bit of that maybe is beyond my area of expertise. That maybe something more for the coaches to figure out. I certainly think it'll be familiar to him, and I think that he'll be able to adapt because of his shooting ability and his ability to just kind of grab and go. If someone gives him a pass, he can make one quick move and be by somebody with that low center of gravity and his tremendous first step. So, and I also think that there's plenty of time too. I think there's a tendency for people to want to rush these rookies into the starting lineups and think, I don't think by any means that it's set in stone. I mean, it's certainly a possibility, but I don't think it's set in stone that the Kings are going to roll out on day one of the regular season a 3-guard lineup featuring Tyrese Fox and Davion Mitchell. I think there's a good chance that Davion comes off the bench with Terrence Davis, and those two guys are kind of tempo changers that in their own way that will be able to light up the scoreboard. So or like you said, it could be the 3-guard thing, and at that point, I would assume that Tyrese Halliburton guards small forwards. And Mitchell probably guards point guards, and Fox probably guards the two guards. And then you've got 3 guys that can take their man off the dribble basically and create plays either for themselves or for others. And that's what Baylor had so much success at the college level. I mean, they had Maceo Teague, Jared Butler, and Davion Mitchell. And, anytime the ball was in any one of those guys' hands, which is usually where it ended up, they had the ability to get penetration and that seems to create open shots for the other folks on the team. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good, fun, exciting season. And the great thing about it, Matt, is unlike other years where, we'd have Summer League in early July, here we are in August, and by the time Las Vegas Summer League ends, it'll really just be a short 4 or 5 weeks, and then we're going to be right back to training camp.
Which I absolutely cannot wait for. I fell in love pretty quickly with this NBA calendar. I am excited for it to get a little bit back to normal, but these quick off seasons of going from finals to draft to summer league and free agency has been a lot of fun. I know you're enjoying it just as much as I am. But another guy that the Kings drafted with the 39th pick, unfortunately we didn't get to see him during the California Classic, but he's expected to be ready to go for summer league in Las Vegas. That's Neemias Queta, Queta, excuse me. I was curious your opinion on the big man out of Utah State. Monty McNair said he was surprised that a 7-footer with his skill set and being such an analytics darling as a big slid that far in the draft. I was curious your opinion on him and what he could be for the Kings.
Yeah, no, I agree with Monty McNair 100% on that. I think many years ago this guy would have been a first rounder. I was talking with Jason last night. Jason Ross and my father and Deuce on the stream that we did, and we were talking a little bit about what may be the future of the Kings lineup at center, and I think Rashawn Holmes obviously is your main guy, and then I think Alex Lynn is probably second, but Neemias Queta had a much better college career than say Damian Jones. I mean, and it's not even close. So Queta. He's a right-handed big, about 6'11", 248 pounds. I think he makes the team better defensively. He's got great size. He's willing to do the dirty work. He ended up being the Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Year, averaged 14.9 points, 10.1 rebounds. And then one of the things that I like about him is he had 2.7 assists per game last year. So he's not just a defender. He had more assists than turnovers, which a lot of times you don't see that from centers. There are the few guys, and they get headlines, certainly, Jokic, Nikola Vucevic, and I'm not putting him in that category, but I am saying that it's a good thing when you've got a 5 that actually can decision make a little bit, you know what I mean, and can set up some other players. A lot of times those guys, you dig into it, and it's like, man, they've got 2 or 3 times the turnovers, as they do assists, So I like that. He doesn't really shoot the 3 ball. He shot 8 3-point attempts during his college career. He ended up making 3 of them, but that's such a low volume that it probably won't matter. And he's got really big hands. He measured 10.5-inch hand width at the combine, which I think was the biggest of anybody there. So he's a guy who, big hands usually mean good hands, and I've watched him enough to say that he has good hands. So I think Queta is going to be a player, and I'm looking forward to seeing him. I'm a little disappointed that we don't get to see him here in Sacramento, but I'll be headed to Vegas, so I'll get a chance to check him out live there.
I would love to get your opinion on a couple of guys that did really impress me on the Sacramento Kings Summer League roster in Game 1 of the California Classic. That was the big man Emmanuel Terry, who I believe has 1 year of NBA experience, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have Matt Coleman, and both of these guys are guys that I've seen float in conversations about potentially earning 2-way contracts with the Sacramento Kings. I'm curious just your opinion in whatever order you want on those two guys and their NBA potential, maybe even with the Kings.
Yeah, I think Emmanuel Terry impressed me last night, too. Loved his energy. He's kind of a skinny big. He's like 6'9", maybe 220, something like that. But full of energy and gets on the board and can score around the basket. He went undrafted in the 2018 draft and then got signed by the Denver Nuggets. He ended up, I think, played summer league with Denver and then signed with the Cavs on their training camp, and then ultimately ended up, I think, playing with the Phoenix Suns on a 10-day, and let's see, where else was he? He was on a 10-day with Miami Heat at one point, and then last year he spent pretty much the whole season on the Clippers G League team, the Agua Caliente Clippers, and did a good job there. So I'm excited about him, at least for Summer League, and, maybe he ends up being a guy that ends up on the Stockton Kings. I'm not sure. I just think, with the glut of centers that the Kings have right now, I think it'd be pretty difficult for him to crack this roster. But definitely a player that I enjoyed watching. And then who was the other one you were?
Matt Coleman, the 6'2" guard.
Yeah, I thought Coleman, if you watched Texas last year, they had three guys that were ballyhooed as, big-time bigs who were going to be draft picks, and that was Greg Brown, Kai Jones, and Jericho Sims.
Yeah.
But really, the heart and soul of that team was Matt Coleman. He was the guy. He was their point guard and leader. And, if they needed a basket, that was the guy they went to. So despite a horrendous three-point shot from the corner in that opening game of Summer League that hit the side of the backboard, I thought he did a good job otherwise. I thought he looked and moved like an NBA player. Sometimes it's just that simple. You look at a guy and he stands out or sticks out in Summer League, and he should. And I thought Matt Coleman did in the opening game of the Summer League, or the California Classic. So I think he's a guy who has a chance. Another guy who I think would have a hard time cracking this roster just based on the fact of the depth that the Kings have. But there could be a spot, and if not, maybe there's a spot in Stockton for him, or maybe someone else in the league, wants to snatch him up.
I know fans were also disappointed for namesake alone that Alex Antetokounmpo didn't get any time in Game 1 of the California Classic. We'll see if that changes in Game 2. But what can you tell me about the younger brother of Giannis Antetokounmpo? Obviously, there's there's a lot of basketball talent and skill in that family. So how do you see Alex making his journey into the NBA?
I'll be real honest with you, Matt. I've never seen Alex Antetokounmpo play.
That makes
so he was one of those guys. I've seen some tape of what looked like some real amateur level play from him, and he looked intriguing and long and all that kind of stuff. But I've never actually seen him play live. So I probably would be remiss if I even commented on him.
That's totally fine, because I'm right there with you. Alex Antetokounmpo is someone I just wanted to see and get my first honest-to-God glimpse at what he's going to play like. So hopefully we get to see that at some point during the Summer League. And what I'll end with, Bobby, is any other names that I didn't necessarily bring up on this Sacramento Kings Summer League roster that stands out to you that you think could have some NBA potential, maybe even elsewhere, not necessarily just in Sacramento, but pieces on this roster that you would say, hey, Kings fans, if you're following Summer League, of course watch for Davion Mitchell and Robert Woodard and the main named guys, but check out this guy and pay attention to this guy as well.
I would say there's one, and that's DJ Stewart. He went to Duke, came out after his freshman year, did not get drafted. He's 19 years old, and in 2020 he ranked 24th among all the high school seniors in the rankings that come out. 24th is that's a high level, and he was a guy who, when mock drafts first came out for the 2021 NBA draft, I saw his name in the first round quite a bit early. Then it slipped to the second round, and ultimately he didn't get drafted. But he's a guy who I think has the tools to get it done right now. He just needs to learn the game of basketball. He's one of those guys that's prone to taking ill-advised shots. He rushes things a little bit, but he certainly has the skill and athleticism to look like he would fit in on an NBA floor, and to be that highly ranked and then go have one bad season at Duke when they were down a little bit. And also, with COVID and all the things that went on, I'm just more inclined to give pretty much that whole class of freshmen a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because you just don't know what all was going on there and everything they went through. So, again, I'm not sure that there's a spot for DJ Stewart on the Kings, but maybe there is. Maybe he ends up in Stockton, or like you say, maybe someone else in the league wants to take a chance on him.
Well, I know Summer League is your basketball oasis every year, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on Locked On Kings to share a little bit of insight. I look forward to having you back on in the near future, maybe when we're looking towards next year's draft class, and especially with the Stockton Kings coverage as well, because there was a lot of talent on the Stockton Kings roster that unfortunately didn't get to compete in the G League bubble, but we saw players like Jamias Ramsey and Robert Woodard get to compete and have a lot of success at the G League bubble last season, and these are guys you know more about than most people on the planet, Bobby. So I appreciate you so much. Look forward to doing it again, and enjoy Game 2 tonight of the California Classic.
Looking forward to it, Matt, and always appreciate you, and thank you for your time.
This Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you, as always, by betonline.ag, the official sports gambling partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Yeah, you can bet on Summer League. I think that's a little overboard, but hey, if that's you, if you know as much as Bobby Gerould does about these Summer League teams, put some money down. Make some money on BetOnline. It's the best place to do so. You, of course, can also bet on the MLB. They have future bets already for the NFL season, UFC MMA action, Olympics, golf. They have it all. It's the best place to place your bets. Also, a lot of fun prop bets as well that I always encourage people to check out just for the fun of reading them and seeing if you can make some money on those too. And we have a resource here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's called Locked On Bets. It's a free show that'll help you make money on BetOnline. And when you go to BetOnline and sign up, make sure you use promo code Locked On. When you do, you'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. It's free money to gamble with at BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Huge thank you to Bobby Gerould for joining me here on the Locked On Kings podcast today. Look forward to having him back on in the near future to talk more about upcoming college prospects, or NBA prospects, I should say, early look at draft classes, and then also get his opinion on some of the G League talent that'll be in Stockton, because I know he'll be very familiar with that. He follows that very, very closely. So big thank you to Bobby again. I hope you enjoyed that. Are any of these guys that intrigue you that you're looking forward to watching? By the way, have you seen Portland's Summer League roster? They have like Michael Beasley, Emmanuel Mudiay. There's so much talent on that Portland Summer League roster. If they don't win the Summer League championship title, whatever the hell it is, they're a colossal failure. It's like the most stacked Summer League roster I've ever seen. Maybe the Orlando Magic are like a close second, but the Orlando Magic are stacked with like young, hopeful talent. The Portland Trailblazers have a lot of actual NBA talent. Kenneth Faried is on that roster as well. So go and check that roster out. Anything you liked or didn't like from the California Classic. If you went, let me know how the experience was. I'm Matt George Radio on Twitter. Email me, mgeorge@saclocalmedia.com. Just so you know, no Friday podcast. I will be traveling to San Diego for my cousin's wedding. So I apologize not having a podcast for you on Friday. So I hope you enjoy your long weekend without Locked On Kings content. When we come back next week, though, we'll truly gear up for Las Vegas Summer League. I'll have more great guests, more great interviews, and a lot of fun as always. We're about to get into the dull months of summer, that long month to 5 weeks in September and early October before training camp begins. But once it does, we're hitting the ground running because the NBA schedule is getting back to normal. Mid-October is when the season starts. It'll be here before we know it. I appreciate all the support you've shown on the Locked On Kings podcast. Audio listeners, YouTube watchers, does not matter. I appreciate you all, and I can't wait to have you join me for the next podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.